Can you guys introduce Mommy?
Spill the beans with Dr. Jill.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for today's episode of Spill the Beans with Dr. Jill. As always, I've brought you a guest that is going to bring such a helpful insight. And it's really fun because we've worked together and we've known each other for so many years. And he's one of these individuals that you're like, how long have we known each other? And when did we first meet? And it's interesting how higher ed works. But I would love for him to introduce himself to the audience today.
Thank you, Jill, for inviting me. My name is Claude Mayo. I am a higher ed professional. I think I've been in every sort of space here in the Connecticut area. I've been faculty, I've been administration from the academic side as well as from student affairs side. I think, Jill, you and I overlapped at a couple different institutions, and now have even more fun as we see each other at conferences, associations, meetings, I don't know, social media, everything. We continue to connect in a whole host of ways. Currently, my daytime job is at Quinnipiac University here in Hamden, Connecticut, where I'm the director of inclusive excellence, making sure that we serve our community, make sure that everyone establishes and finds their way of belonging around here.
Awesome. And are you still teaching?
I am still teaching as well. I do a lot of sort of adjunct teaching here on campus. I teach in the first year seminar as well as in the legal studies area. At some of the college student personnel programs in our region. I'm still teaching a wide variety of courses. Mostly focused, many focused on the ethical and legal issues in higher education, but then also some student development stuff as well.
I'm so excited to talk to you because, in full transparency for the audience, when I reached out to Claude and said, would you consider coming on this series? I think there was some reluctance of like, I'm not really sure that I really know that much about your research. And I'm like, oh, not a problem. That's exactly what we want to talk about. So before I kind of like prodded you, did you know about vicarious trauma and what did you know?
I don't think so. I think I may have heard the term in passing, but certainly didn't have a working knowledge or understanding of it, and certainly therefore had not thought about it in reflection, in connection to myself.
Yeah.
Never reflected on my work or even the people that I work with and how we may be impacted on it. I think we're so sort of attuned to just going, going, going. We don't stop to think about how what we've endured a long time.
Yeah, and it's what we talk about in the workshop is that it's a byproduct of the job and it's the cost for caring, right? And so I would love to kind of break down with you if you're not talking to someone about the cases and the nuances, how do you take care of yourself?
That's a great question. I don't know that I do it in an intentional way, and you'll probably correct me on that at some point, I hope. I think what I do is make sure that in all the communities that I work in, that I have a community in of myself. We belong to, and we dedicate ourselves to the work that's happening in these institutions.
Mhm.
And in time, in tune, we have to make sure that the institution sort of takes care of us. And for me, that often includes making the relationships that are make it hard to leave or to not be part of an institution anymore. It's those people that you take with you, the people that when you go to work, you can connect with, the people that even when you leave work, you're still texting and finding relationships with. When people leave institutions and they're in different places, they still reach out and have these kind of conversations, both for the fun stuff, but also the stuff that's really enriching and it really helps you to become a better professional. For me, I think it's really about building community in every one of those spaces so that as you take on trauma, you're still sharing your burden, you're still sharing your load, and you have people that are supporting you.
So in the vicarious trauma world, we call that a protective factor. It's establishing that community, and you're a family man, you are involved in a fraternity, you have community partners, and so you've got a lot of different outlets. So organically, you have created a protective factor for yourself. Um, that's like really the biggest protective factor that you can do is that a lot of the research in the helping profession says that the more that you share your narrative with someone else, the less the vicarious trauma is that you're holding each day. If I had to venture, your partner, your family, your best friends, they probably have a good idea of what you do for a living, but I don't know about you, but my family still thinks I'm like an RA.
Yeah.
And so we joke a lot about how, like, because we're wearing so many different hats, it's really hard to explain to those that care the most about me and what you do, of what we do day to day. And so it's really about when you have that really heavy case that's staying with you, that's keeping you up at night, or it's circled back and you remember it, that you have that person that can hold your hand, get a hug, reach out to, and say, I just need a moment to be with you. That's a protective factor. It's the largest one that we can be doing. So that organically, you're doing it.
That's awesome. I thank you for sort of sharing that, still teaching me along the way, because I think it is just that, certainly not to co-opt your term, but vicarious trauma is also victorious trauma. I think that we go into these things, especially in our line of work. I'm not doing anything that I've done here at my desk or in my office, or is not just for me. We're
Right.
working for students, we're working for faculty, we're working for the administrators that we're in this whole thing with. And so as we're working towards that progress, we're enduring that fight to get towards whatever goal we have, making sure that we get to that goal together. I think like you said, it's protective because we're going through it in mass.
Right.
Um, I never see any one of my tasks as just the thing that I'm doing, and it's only Claude's problem, and it's really Claude's burden to bear. I know I have to do my part. I have to contribute to something that's much larger. Somebody else has already spoken on it. Somebody else is going to appear for the presentation. Somebody else is going to have to take it from me and continue to run with it. And so I'm part of a team or part of a community that's working on something. And so I feel protected in that and being part of that piece.
No, I love to hear that for you. And that's all that we could want for our colleagues that are doing this work, is that they not be in silo. The other thing that I thought would be interesting to talk to you about is the intersection of our identities in the work that we're doing, and how sometimes our own identities are tapped differently because that's the kind of case that we're dealing with. So there's numerous indicators of vicarious trauma, and how you respond to an incident might be vastly different than me because of our background, because of our identities,
Sure.
or because of our day. Like the fact that I've had lunch or the fact that I had a good night's sleep would mean that my vicarious trauma is going to resonate differently that day than you who didn't have those things, right? So I give like a list of all of the indicators of vicarious trauma, ranging from anger and sadness to guilt. And is there an indication of when you know that you need a break or you need to take a beat because it's resonating differently with you? Is there an emotion that when you're at work or you're coming off a really high profile case that's really layered, that you're exhibiting an emotion that I can correlate that that's probably how your vicarious trauma is coming forward?
That's a good question. I think for me, it probably are those instances where I'm so passionately just want to vent about something.
Mm,
It's the pieces of just sort of talking about what has already happened, and my maybe ill feelings for displeasure with, you know, can you believe it's this? It's just that, and I find myself sort of stuck in a rut of doing that, sort of just trying to get it off of my chest, but without that progressive. Well, this is what that thing is now going to become. This is what I have now the power to help towards. This is not maybe not saying it to somebody who's part of that community that I referenced before, because they're not going to help us get to the next piece. I think it's when I'm sort of just offloading without taking the time to sort of re-strategize,
yeah.
reaffirm, and sort of reconnect to the goal. I think is where I notice it the most. And it's those times where hopefully you're doing that in that community where somebody helps to reel you in. I get it. That makes sense. That isn't the right thing, or that is not fair. But remember, this is the challenge in front of us. This is the direction we're going. This is the next step, or the thing that we can plan to go forward. This is how we're strategizing. And I think that help and that support allows you to get back on track a little bit.
Organically, you're speaking about the theory that I used for my dissertation. So,
Yes.
yeah, constructivist self-development theory is this idea that because what we do for a living is so impactful, that it might train change our frame of reference for our daily life. It questions, do we have a high impact, or why do these things individually happen to individuals, or, question the why is a frame of reference. And so that's kind of the box that I would put you in, is that it sounds like sometimes there might be a level of frustration where you're questioning the impact of the systems, and functionality, how to do the job, how to be successful in the job, but having that aha moment at the end could be that your frame of reference is being challenged a little bit because of the things that you see at work, which I wouldn't blame anyone that's one in DEI work right now, right? Or close to your teaching students on different levels. I know that you're taught freshmen
First year seminar, yeah.
with students. So you're seeing them on all different developmental spectrums, right? And
Yeah.
so it's kind of really cool that you're speaking. For me, I would put you in frame of reference as resonating a lot for your vicarious trauma at times.
That makes a lot of sense. Like you said, you pointed to this specific work, or even in your work with students that are the freshman students or our first year students are very different than our graduate students that are specifically in higher education programs that are coming out to be our peers. They're operating at very different wavelengths. But though those moments when you want to make that impact, when you want to swing for the fences and hit a home run, in each time that's not going to happen, it certainly does become frustrating. It certainly does. You do certainly, unfortunately, have to question the impact a little bit. Having that coach on the sideline, and I'm sorry for the bad sports analogy here, but having that coach on the sideline that says, "Hey, well, if we hit a bunch of singles, we're going to get that same run that one big swing
Yeah.
took." And so sometimes biting off the smaller pieces and realizing we can make the little smaller impacts to make it more cumulative progress is important.
So you've met my children a couple of times. We've kind of collided in different paths
Certainly.
off campus and whatnot. I have definitely reconsider different messages that I give my toddlers as far as lessons I've learned. And it's hard not to think about when you become a parent, some of the students telling you their stories. It's hard not to think sometime with the parent hat, you know, whether it's they're experiencing injustices or there's a location that you're like, I never want my kids to go there, or, those are all vicarious trauma moments. You don't have to give the details, but has there ever been that kind of merge of the parent Claude or the family person, the mentor, that you've now then had these nuances of experiences that you've heard?
Certainly, I think it's incessant. I At this point, I have a 20-year-old and I have a 5-year-old. So the need to message differently is it's inherent, just built into that. Though in return, they both give me one-word answers. So I guess they get the same philosophy,
Yeah.
but I inherently have to speak to them differently and try to maybe the same relevant message, but try to code it in a way that meets them where they are. That same token, my 20-year-old is also a student here at the institution. So on a daily basis, I'm seeing her as a parent, but also as the administrator that's helping not only her friends, but then her herself as one of my students. And trying to have the administrator conversation versus the parent conversation
Mhm.
with her can sometimes clash because she doesn't necessarily know which one's coming out. And I don't know which one I'm necessarily putting out as much. And the way that I addressed her friends, because they kind of see me as I may get called dad by more than one student on this campus
Right.
fairly often, but maybe they even more receptive to the parent type because of the fact that they know me as a parent, even though I'm not their parent. And that's not the administrator hat that I wear with students that don't know her as much. Coding that message or figuring out how to deliver that message, knowing your audience, and to evoke the phrase, the emotional intelligence, and recognizing all the things that I am and then trying to convey across to people that are receiving me in different ways. And then going back to my son in different ages, I think is so important in all of that. Because getting the message across is the most important piece. And there, as you pointed out, there's so many factors that stand in the way of that.
Yeah, and I definitely want to normalize for anyone that's in the helping profession that if they're having a hard time not separating their role at home versus at work, that is part of vicarious trauma. Is there is no switch, like we try very hard to compartmentalize and process, but it's easier said than done.
Certainly.
Yeah.
Certainly.
I'm ending all of my episodes with asking the participants for one word or one phrase to spill the beans. If you had to share something with us today, what would it land on?
I'd say enjoyment.
Oh,
Making sure that what you're doing, you're still enjoying. I think the way that I go through my vicarious trauma is not knowing that it's trauma because I'm enjoying the thing that I'm doing. Not the trauma, the traumatic part, of course,
yeah, yeah,
but
yeah.
enjoying it, the purpose, enjoying the work, enjoying the initiative and remembering the motivations of why I'm pursuing in that direction helps, sort of the nicks and the bumps and the bruises along the way, I think start to dissipate and helps you um, understand and rationalize those in such a way that they don't get in the way of you getting to the journey. Going through the journey and getting to the goal, I should say. I'm a fan of a bunch of different quotes, and a lot of them talk about that piece. And the one that's coming to my head right now is from Muhammad Ali, who said, it wasn't the mountains it wasn't the mountains in front of you that served as the obstacle, but it was the pebble in the shoe. It's the little things that you let sort of become those things that are the deterrent. But if you know what that goal is, if you know where you're trying to go, if you know that he has another quote that talks about it wasn't the performance in the ring but all the workouts that got you to that ring so that you could have that prize fight. If you remain focused on those things and understanding those, but you're enjoying the whole time, I think that that's where it is that's going to make you the best professional and even maybe a best person that you can be.
I so appreciate that. What you're speaking to is a theme of compassion satisfaction. And it sounds to me like you're one of these practitioners that instead of nurturing to prevent the burnout, that you're leaning into the compassion satisfaction with enjoyment, which will organically move you away from burnout and negative vicarious trauma. So again, another gem you don't even know you're doing, but this is
I
how
had no idea.
it feels so on. So we'll end it there with keynotes from Claude Mayo to spill the beans and have enjoyment. Thank you so much for joining today's
Thank you very
episode, and
much.
I hope you enjoyed it.
I did. Thank you very much, Jill. It's always great to see you.
Welcome. Bye-bye. Hi, everyone. Hopping back on to do some reflections with you regarding my conversation with Claude. It was so wonderful to see him and talk about enjoyment because that is an element of how you can nurture your vicarious trauma. Oftentimes, I'm asked in my seminars and my workshops, what do I do for my vicarious trauma? So I thought I would give you some tips. So, number one, I am a Leo, for those that don't know that. So I love the summer. And many of you might have been taught to like go for a walk to clear your mind when you have a traumatic situation or you need a break. I'm actually going to ask you to do something a little different. What I'm going to ask you to do is think about what you did as a child. I love to swim. I love the water. And so what I do is I go to the bathroom and I do a ritual where I wash my hands, and it's kind of like symbolic of like a baptism or renewal of like getting all of that ick off of you, right? So whether I'm dealing with a situation where it's a student, faculty, staff, current or in my tenure, anytime that I've heard a story that just didn't feel good to hear and I really need to like cleanse, I go and wash my hands. And in that is like a water therapy technique. And then I go for my walk. So I'm hoping that by sharing that little tip, that might inspire some activity that you did or can do. One other example that I would give you is I had a colleague who really loved to build things. When I asked him what was going on with him, he said that he felt super burnt out. He was a university counsel and felt like he needs to leave the field, as many of us question if this is all worth it. And so I asked him what he liked to do as a child, and he shared with me that he loved to do Legos and build Lego sets. And so I bought him a little Lego set, and I said, I'm going to give you a call in a couple days, and I want to know how it went. And he looked at me very befuddled. What do you mean? And I said, I want you to do your Legos after you do an intake or a conversation that's heavy. I want you to do some Legoing and I'll give you a call. Well, I called him and he was super busy. And so we finally connected and I went to his office and he had Lego sets everywhere. And I was, what is going on? This place looks like a Lego museum. And he said that it was the most therapeutic experience for him to do this kinesthetic tool that really brought him joy of childhood memories and is something that he can do with the clients. And so I said, so you're good? And he's like, well, I'm not cured, right? Like it's not magic, but it definitely allows me to see that we need to do things at work that give us joy. And so I thought of this story again as I was meeting with Claude just now of how many of us focus on the negative parts of work. And while I'm going to continue to teach you tools on how to nurture those negative components, sometimes the other option is to infuse more joy into your daily life. So that's my tips for today. Thank you for joining me.